Porter Wilson couldn't remember the last time he had gotten a full night's sleep. Between his early morning shifts at Meridian Enterprises and making sure his daughter had everything she needed for school, rest had become a luxury he couldn't afford. Not that he was complaining. Life had dealt him some tough cards, but his 12-year-old daughter Lily was worth every sacrifice. The alarm on his phone buzzed at 4:30 a.m., same as every weekday. Porter reached over and turned it off before it could wake Lily in the next room. Their apartment wasn't big, just a modest 2-bedroom in the older part of town, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, theirs. He moved quietly through his morning routine: shower, shave, and a quick breakfast of instant coffee and toast. Before leaving, Porter peeked into Lily's room. She slept peacefully, her dark hair spread across the pillow, clutching the stuffed rabbit he'd given her for her 5th birthday. It was getting worn now, with one ear nearly falling off. He made a mental note to stitch it back on this weekend. On the nightstand sat a framed photo of his late wife, Anna. 3 years had passed since the car accident that took her from them, but the pain still caught in his chest whenever he looked at her smiling face. Porter gently closed the door and left a note on the kitchen counter. "Lunch is in the fridge. Dad loves you. Have a great day at school." The city was still dark as Porter drove to work in his aging Honda. The radio played softly, classical music, the only genre he allowed himself these days. As Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the car, his fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel, muscle memory from years ago moving them in perfect rhythm. Meridian Enterprises occupied a gleaming 20-story building downtown. By 5:30 a.m., Porter had changed into his gray custodial uniform and started his rounds. The early morning hours before the office workers arrived were his favorite. Just him, the empty hallways, and occasionally the night security guard nodding hello. "Morning, Porter?" called Jorge, the security guard, as Porter pushed his cleaning cart toward the executive floor. "Morning," Porter replied with a small smile. "How's the night shift treating you?" Same old, same old." "How's the little one?" "She's good. Got an A on her science project yesterday." Jorge grinned. "Smart kid. Takes after her dad, I bet." Porter just nodded, though inside he doubted that. Lily had her mother's brains, her kindness too. What had he given her besides an overworked father and memories of a happier time? The executive floor was Porter's first stop each morning. He started with the conference rooms, then moved to the private offices. The corner office belonged to Richard Harmon, the CEO. Porter had only seen him a handful of times, a tall, imposing man with steel-gray hair who rarely acknowledged the custodial staff. The office held the usual executive furniture: mahogany desk, leather chairs, awards on the walls. But what always caught Porter's eye was the baby grand piano in the corner. It seemed out of place in a corporate setting, but rumor had it that Harmon occasionally entertained clients with live music. Porter always spent extra time cleaning around the piano, careful never to touch it. Still, sometimes when the floor was completely empty, he would stand near it, remembering the feel of ivory under his fingers from another lifetime. Today was no different. After dusting the office and emptying the trash, Porter paused by the piano. The lid was closed, the surface gleaming under the morning light now filtering through the large windows. For a brief moment he imagined sitting down, placing his hands on the keys. "Wouldn't want to lose this job too, would you?" he muttered to himself, turning away abruptly. By 8:01 a.m. the office was coming to life. Employees trickled in with their coffee cups and laptop bags, barely noticing the freshly cleaned surfaces or the man in gray who created them. Porter kept his head down, pushing his cart to the next floor, invisible in plain sight. During his break, Porter sat alone in the small break room designated for maintenance staff. He pulled out his phone and texted Lily, "Hope you had a good morning. Remember band practice after school?" Lily's response came quickly. "Got it, Dad. Mrs. Chen says I'm getting better at violin."
"Love you."
A small smile crossed Porter's face. The violin lessons were an expense they couldn't really afford, but when Lily had shown interest in music, he couldn't say no. Music was in her blood, even if she didn't know the full story. The afternoon dragged on with more cleaning, minor repairs, and avoiding eye contact with executives who might ask him to fetch coffee. At 3:30, Porter took his second break, calling Lily to make sure she had made it to band practice safely. "Dad, you don't have to check on me every day," she protested, though he could hear the smile in her voice. "Humor your old man," Porter replied. "How was school?" Fine. Oh, Mr. Reynolds asked if any of us play piano. They need someone to accompany the band for the spring concert. Porter felt his heart skip a beat. And what did you say? I said no, obviously. Neither of us plays piano. Right, Porter said, relief and something else, regret maybe, washing over him. Of course, I gotta go, Dad, love you. Love you too, sweetheart. After hanging up, Porter sat quietly for a moment, memories flooding back. The prestigious music school. The hours of practice. The performances that once earned him standing ovations. And the day he walked away from it all when Anna got pregnant and they needed stable income. Not the uncertain life of a struggling musician. No one at Meridian knew about his past. To them, he was just Porter the janitor, the quiet single dad who kept to himself. That's how he preferred it. The fewer questions, the better. By 5 p.m., most employees had left, and Porter moved through the empty offices with his vacuum. The marketing department was having some kind of after-hours meeting, and he could hear laughter from the large conference room as he worked nearby. Hey, Porter, called a voice. It was Brendan Moore, the marketing director, a man known for his loud personality and expensive suits. We need some help in here. Porter set aside his vacuum and approached the doorway. Inside, about a dozen marketing employees were gathered around a table covered with takeout containers and bottles of wine. Could you take care of this mess when we're done? Big presentation tomorrow, Brendan said, barely looking at Porter. Yes, sir, Porter replied quietly, as he turned to leave. He heard another marketing employee, Taylor he thought her name was, ask, Isn't there a company party coming up next week? For the charity thing? The annual gala, yeah, Brendan replied. Harmon's pet project to impress the investors. We've hired the same boring pianist as last year. Porter continued his work, trying not to listen but catching snippets of conversation about expensive tickets and networking opportunities. The annual charity gala was a major event at Meridian, raising money for local children's programs. Employees from the custodial staff weren't invited, of course. At 7:00 p.m., Porter finally clocked out. His shoulders ached from a long day of physical work, but he still had one more stop before home. The community center where Lily had her violin lessons was just a few blocks from their apartment. He arrived just as her lesson was ending. Through the window of the practice room, he watched as his daughter carefully placed her violin in its case, nodding seriously at whatever her teacher was saying. When she spotted him, her face lit up with a smile so like her mother's that it made his heart twist. Dad, you're early. Thought we could grab some dinner before heading home, Porter said, nodding politely to Mrs. Chen, Lily's teacher. Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Chen greeted him. Lily is progressing wonderfully. She has a natural ear for music. Pride warmed Porter's chest. Thank you. She works hard. The spring concert is coming up, Mrs. Chen continued. We're still looking for a piano accompanist. You wouldn't happen to play, would you? Before Porter could answer, Lily laughed. My dad? No way. He can barely hum a tune. Porter forced a smile, ignoring the pang in his chest. I'm afraid my daughter's right. I'm not musically inclined. Mrs. Chen looked disappointed but nodded. Well, if you know anyone, please let me know. It's getting quite urgent. On their way to the diner for dinner, Lily chattered about her day, her friends, the upcoming concert. Porter listened, asking questions at the right moments, trying to push away the nagging voice in his head telling him he was living a lie. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Porter sat at their small kitchen table with a cup of tea. From a drawer rarely opened, he pulled out an old program, yellowed with age. Juilliard School of Music presents Spring Showcase, it read. And there, listed among the performers, Porter Wilson, piano. His fingers traced over his printed name. Sometimes it felt like that person, that talented, ambitious young man with dreams of concert halls, was someone else entirely. Someone who had disappeared the day he chose responsibility over passion. Porter tucked the program away and glanced at the calendar on the wall. The Meridian Charity Gala was marked for next Friday. He would be working that night not as a guest but as part of the cleanup crew, invisible as always. He had made his peace with that life long ago. Or at least that's what he told himself as he turned off the lights and headed to bed, another day of being Porter the janitor ahead of him. What he didn't know was that in just over a week, the careful walls he had built between his past and present were about to come crashing down, all because of a baby grand piano and a joke at his expense. The week leading up to Meridian's annual charity gala passed in a blur for Porter. The cleaning schedule had doubled with preparations for the big event, and he found himself working even longer hours than usual. The company had hired an outside cleaning service to help, but Porter still handled the executive floor himself. Mr. Harmon insisted on it. "Dad, you look exhausted," Lily said on Thursday night as they sat at their small kitchen table eating takeout Chinese food. Porter had been too tired to cook. "I'm fine, sweetheart," he replied, trying to hide a yawn. "Just busy at work. This fancy party is tomorrow and everyone's running around like crazy." Lily twirled noodles around her fork. "Mrs. Chen says I can still join the spring concert even without a piano player. I'll just play with the other violins." Porter nodded, guilt gnawing at him. If he were a different kind of father, the kind who hadn't buried his talents along with his dreams, he could have helped her. Instead, he just said, "That's great, honey. I'm sure you'll be wonderful." "Will you have to work late tomorrow, too?" she asked. "Yeah. The party goes until midnight, and then there's cleanup." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Mrs. Rodriguez will stay with you until I get home. And I promise we'll do something fun on Saturday to make up for it." Lily nodded, but Porter could see the disappointment in her eyes. He'd been promising something fun on Saturday for 3 years now. Sometimes he managed to deliver, a trip to the zoo or the science museum when they had free admission days. But often he was too tired or got called in for weekend work, and their plans fell through. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Porter sat on their small balcony with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights. From their apartment, he could just make out the top of the Meridian building, its logo glowing blue against the night sky. Tomorrow, that building would be filled with the city's elite, raising champagne glasses for charity while he emptied their trash cans. Porter didn't resent his job. It paid the bills, had decent health insurance for Lily, and the night manager was understanding when he occasionally needed to leave early for his daughter's school events. But on nights like this, the distance between the life he had and the life he once thought he'd have felt vast. His phone buzzed with a text from Jorge, the security guard. "Heads up, they brought the piano into the main ballroom today. Real fancy one." Porter texted back a quick thanks. He appreciated Jorge's updates. They helped him prepare mentally for each day's tasks. A piano in the ballroom meant extra care with the cleaning products, making sure nothing spilled that could damage the instrument. What he didn't tell Jorge was how his heart had jumped at the news. A piano. He would be in the same room as a piano tomorrow night. Not that it mattered. He hadn't played in years, and he certainly wasn't going to start again surrounded by Meridian's executives and their wealthy friends. Morning came too soon. Porter dropped Lily off at school with a hug and a reminder about Mrs. Rodriguez picking her up later. Then he headed to Meridian, where the building was already buzzing with activity despite the early hour. "Wilson," called out his supervisor as soon as he walked in. "You're on ballroom duty all day. They need someone to clean as they set up, and Harmon asked for you specifically." Porter nodded, surprised that the CEO even knew his name. He changed into his uniform and headed to the grand ballroom on the top floor, a space usually reserved for the most important company events. The room had been transformed overnight. Gone were the usual conference tables and chairs, replaced with round dining tables covered in crisp white cloths. A stage had been set up at one end of the room, and there it was, a gleaming black grand piano, even more impressive than the one in Harmon's office. "Be careful around the piano," instructed the event coordinator, a harried woman with a clipboard who barely looked at Porter. "The pianist is coming at 6 for a sound check, and Mr. Harmon wants everything perfect." All day, Porter worked around a stream of florists, caterers, sound technicians, and decorators. He emptied trash, wiped down surfaces, and vacuumed carpet, always aware of the piano sitting on stage like a silent challenge. Once, when the room was briefly empty, he found himself standing next to it, his hand hovering over the lid. "Don't even think about it," he whispered to himself, pulling his hand back. He had a good job here. A stable job. Lily needed that more than she needed a father who couldn't let go of the past. By 6 o'clock, the ballroom was ready. Centerpieces of white lilies adorned each table. Tiny lights twinkled from the ceiling, and a banner hung over the stage. Meridian Enterprises' annual charity gala, changing lives through music education. Porter felt a pang reading those words. Music education. That had been Anna's passion. bringing music to kids who couldn't afford lessons. After she died, he'd found a folder on her computer filled with plans for a community music program she'd hoped to start someday. Now he stood in a room where wealthy people would donate thousands to similar programs, while he couldn't even afford a piano for his own daughter to learn on. "Wilson," said his supervisor, appearing at his elbow, "you're to stay and help with any cleanup needs during the event. Wear this." He handed Porter a black vest with event staff embroidered on the pocket. "Try to blend in with the walls, you know the drill." Porter changed into the vest and positioned himself discreetly near one of the service entrances. Guests began arriving at 7, men in tuxedos, women in glittering dresses. Porter recognized some of Meridian's executives, including Brendan Moore from marketing, who arrived with a group of laughing colleagues. Mr. Harmon made his entrance at 7:30, commanding attention in a perfectly tailored suit. He moved through the room, shaking hands, the perfect host, though Porter noticed his smile never quite reached his eyes. Dinner was served at 8. Porter and the other service staff cleared plates, refilled water glasses, and handled minor spills. All the while, the piano sat untouched on stage. At 9, Mr. Harmon took to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight to support a cause close to my heart. The Meridian Music Initiative will bring instruments and instruction to schools across our city, giving children the gift of music regardless of their financial circumstances." Applause filled the room. Porter, standing near the back wall, felt a conflicted surge of emotion. The cause was worthy, exactly what Anna would have supported. But the gap between these people's lives and his own felt painfully wide. "And now," Harmon continued, "we had planned for some musical entertainment to accompany your dessert course. Unfortunately, I've just been informed that our pianist has been delayed by traffic and may not make it at all." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harmon looked genuinely displeased, his carefully planned evening disrupted. He turned to confer with an assistant, and Porter could see the tension in his shoulders. From across the room, Porter heard Brendan Moore's voice louder than necessary after several glasses of wine. "Hey, why don't we have some fun while we wait? There's a piano and plenty of people here. Anyone play?" A few nervous laughs, but no volunteers. Porter kept his eyes down, focusing on collecting empty glasses from a nearby table. "What about you, Richard?" Someone called to Harmon. "It's your piano in the office, after all." The CEO shook his head. "I appreciate the instrument, but I've never learned to play. The piano was my mother's." "Well, we need someone," Brendan insisted, his voice carrying across the now quiet room. His eyes landed on Porter and a smirk spread across his face. "Hey, what about the cleaning guy? You're around these fancy instruments all day. Pick up anything?" All eyes turned to Porter. He froze, a tray of empty glasses in his hands. His heart hammered in his chest. "Come on," Brendan pressed, encouraged by the amused looks from his colleagues. "Give it a shot. Can't be worse than no music at all." Porter looked to his supervisor, who stood by the wall looking uncomfortable. The man gave a slight nod, permission to respond to a guest's request. I don't think that would be appropriate, sir," Porter said quietly. "Nonsense." Brendan walked over and took the tray from Porter's hand, setting it on a nearby table. "We're all friends here. Just one song to entertain us while we wait for the professional." Porter looked around the room. Most guests watched with mild curiosity or amusement. Some had already turned back to their conversations, dismissing the exchange as meaningless entertainment. Mr. Harmon stood by the stage, his expression unreadable. "Brendan," said a woman at his table, "leave the poor man alone. This isn't a talent show." "Just having a bit of fun," Brendan replied, but he was already guiding, almost pushing Porter toward the stage. "One song, that's all. Then we'll let you get back to your glasses." Porter found himself standing at the bottom of the 3 steps leading to the stage. The piano waited above him, lid open, keys exposed like a row of perfect white teeth. His palms began to sweat. He could refuse, walk away, go back to being invisible. His supervisor would understand. No one expected service staff to perform, but something kept him rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the banner about music education. Maybe it was thinking about what Anna would have done. Or maybe, after 3 years of crushing down every creative impulse for the sake of stability, something in him needed to break free. Porter looked back at the crowd of expectant faces. He caught sight of Mr. Harmon, who was watching him with sudden intensity, as if seeing him for the first time. "One song," Porter heard himself say. He climbed the steps slowly, each one feeling higher than the last. The chatter in the room dimmed as he approached the piano. He sat down on the bench, and the familiar position, back straight, feet finding the pedals, hands hovering over the keys, sent a shock of recognition through his body. It had been years, but his hands remembered. The question was, would they still obey? The ballroom fell silent as Porter sat at the piano. The spotlight felt hot on his face, and for a moment he considered walking away. He could still hear Brendan's mocking tone, could feel the weight of all those skeptical eyes on his back. What was he doing up here anyway? He was the janitor, the invisible man who emptied their trash and wiped their fingerprints from glass doors. But then his fingers touched the cool ivory keys, and something shifted inside him. The piano was a Steinway, better than anything he'd played even in his Juilliard days. The action was perfect, the tone would be magnificent. Such an instrument deserved respect, regardless of who sat before it. Porter took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He hadn't planned what to play, but his hands knew. They found the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, No. 2, the piece he had played the first time he met Anna. The first delicate notes floated out over the silent ballroom. Porter kept his touch light, letting the melody emerge like a question. He had forgotten this feeling, the way time seemed to slow down when he played, how the world narrowed to just his hands and the keys beneath them. A soft gasp from someone in the audience reached his ears, but he didn't open his eyes. He was afraid that if he looked up, the spell would break. Instead, he leaned into the music, letting the familiar patterns flow through him. The piece built slowly, the right hand spinning out the haunting melody while the left provided gentle support. Porter had played this so many times in another life that his body remembered every nuance, every subtle shift in tempo. His foot found the pedal naturally, sustaining notes just long enough to let them bloom before releasing them. As he reached the middle section, memories washed over him. Anna in a blue dress standing by the doorway of the practice room at school, listening. The way she had smiled when he finished, how she had asked him the name of that beautiful song. Their first coffee date the next day. The lifetime that had followed from that chance encounter. Porter's hands moved faster now, navigating the more complex passages with growing confidence. Years of disuse melted away as muscle memory took over. The music swelled, filling the grand space, bouncing off high ceilings and returning to him like an old friend. He had forgotten this feeling, or perhaps buried it intentionally. The pure joy of creation, the power of sharing something beautiful. The way his heart seemed to speak directly through his fingers, no words needed. As the piece approached its conclusion, Porter finally allowed himself to open his eyes. The ballroom had transformed. Gone were the mocking smiles and skeptical glances. Instead, he saw slack jaws and wide eyes. Some people had stopped mid-bite with forks hovering in the air. A woman at a front table had tears streaming down her face. And at the edge of the stage stood Richard Harmon, the powerful CEO who had never spared Porter a second glance. The man's face had lost all its customary sternness. His eyes were fixed on Porter's hands, and in them was something Porter couldn't quite identify. Shock, certainly, but also something deeper. Something like pain. Porter brought the nocturne to its gentle conclusion, letting the final notes linger in the air before lifting his hands from the keys. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was absolute, then the room erupted in applause. Not polite society party applause, but genuine, enthusiastic clapping. Someone whistled. A woman in the back called "Bravo." Porter felt his cheeks burn as he stood from the bench and gave an awkward bow. As he turned to leave the stage, he found his path blocked by Mr. Harmon. Up close, Porter could see that the CEO's eyes were rimmed with red. "Where?" Harmon asked, his voice so quiet that only Porter could hear it over the continuing applause. "Did you learn to play like that?" Before Porter could answer, Brendan from marketing rushed over, all traces of mockery gone from his face. "Porter, man, that was incredible. I had no idea. I was just joking around, but that was..." He seemed at a loss for words, then gestured to the piano. "Can you play something else?" Porter looked to Mr. Harmon, unsure of the protocol. Was he allowed to continue, or should he return to his duties? The CEO gave a slight nod. "One more," Harmon said, then added, "Please." Porter returned to the bench. The audience quieted immediately. This time he chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, Another piece from his past. The Impressionist masterpiece was more technically demanding than the Chopin, but Porter found his fingers moving with increasing confidence. The years of practice couldn't be erased. It seemed even by years of neglect, as the dreamy, moonlit melody filled the room. Porter allowed himself to think of Lily. How proud she would be if she could see him now. How he had hidden this part of himself from her, thinking it would somehow make their life easier if he forgot his passion. He had been wrong about that, he realized now. So wrong. When he finished the second piece, the applause was even more enthusiastic than before. People were on their feet. An older woman approached the piano with tears in her eyes. "Young man," she said, though Porter was hardly young anymore. "That was exquisite. Are you a professional?" I studied at Juilliard," Porter answered, the words feeling strange in his mouth after so long. "But that was many years ago." "Juilliard?" Brendan repeated, his eyebrows shooting up. "But you're—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Porter knew what he meant. "But you're a janitor. But you're nobody. But you're invisible." "Mr. Wilson," said Harmon, using Porter's name for the first time in 3 years of employment. "Would you join me for a moment?" He gestured toward a quiet corner of the ballroom. Porter followed, acutely aware of the eyes tracking his movement. The invisibility he had cultivated for years had been shattered in less than 10 minutes. In the corner, away from the curious onlookers, Harmon turned to face him. The CEO's composure had returned, but something had changed in the way he looked at Porter. "That nocturne," Harmon said quietly. "My mother played it." Porter nodded, unsure how to respond. "She was a concert pianist before she married my father," Harmon continued. "She gave it up to raise me and my sisters, but she never stopped playing at home. That Chopin piece was her favorite. It's a beautiful composition," Porter offered. "She died 5 years ago, just as Meridian was taking off." Harmon's voice remained steady, but Porter could see the effort it took. "The piano in my office was hers. I keep it there to remind me of what she sacrificed for her family. For me." Porter thought of his own sacrifice, of the dreams he had set aside when Lily was born. He had never regretted that choice, not for a second. But he was beginning to see that burying his talent completely had been unnecessary, perhaps even harmful. "Mr. Wilson," Harmon said, "I've seen you cleaning my office every day for 3 years, and I never once suspected you were anything more than a janitor. That's my failure, not yours." "It's just a job, sir," Porter said. "We all do what we have to." "Indeed." Harmon looked back at the piano. "The scheduled pianist just called. He's stuck in traffic and won't make it. Would you consider playing for the remainder of the evening?" "We would compensate you, of course." Porter hesitated. He had come here to work, but not like this. "I'm not sure if that's allowed, sir. I'm still on duty. I'm the CEO, Mr. Wilson. I think we can make an exception to the rules." For the first time that evening, a small smile crossed Harmon's face. "Besides, you've already done more for this charity event than anyone expected. Music education is our cause tonight, and you've just given everyone in this room a masterclass in why it matters." Before Porter could answer, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at it quickly, a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Lily has a fever. Not emergency, but she's asking for you." "I'm sorry, sir," Porter said, showing him the message. "My daughter, I need to go." Harmon nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Family comes first." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "My private number. Call me tomorrow. I think we have some things to discuss about your future at Meridian." Porter took the card, trying to process what was happening. "Thank you, sir." "No," Harmon said quietly. "Thank you. For the music. For the reminder." As Porter hurried to collect his things, people stopped him, asking questions, offering compliments. The invisibility was gone. He made his excuses as politely as he could, explaining that his daughter needed him. In the staff room, he quickly changed back into his street clothes. His supervisor was waiting by the door. "Wilson," the man said, looking uncomfortable, "about what happened up there." "I'm sorry if I overstepped," Porter began. But the supervisor shook his head. "Are you kidding? Harmon just told me to make sure you're not bothered with cleanup duties tonight. Said your talents are being wasted on trash cans." He gave Porter an appraising look. "Guess there's more to you than meets the eye." "My daughter's sick," Porter explained, eager to leave. "I need to go." Go. The supervisor waved him off. "But Wilson?" Whatever Harmon offers you tomorrow, take it. Opportunities like this don't come twice. Porter nodded and rushed out. As he drove home, his hands still tingling from the piano, his mind raced with questions. What had just happened? What would Harmon want to discuss tomorrow? And how would he explain to Lily that the father she thought couldn't even hum a tune had once been on track to become a concert pianist? The apartment building came into view. Porter took a deep breath. Whatever came next, one thing was certain. The wall he had built between his past and present had crumbled. And strangely, despite the uncertainty ahead, he felt lighter than he had in years. Porter found Mrs. Rodriguez waiting at his apartment door, her kind face lined with worry. She's been asking for you, the older woman said, gathering her purse. I gave her some children's medicine for the fever about an hour ago. It's not too high, but she's feeling pretty miserable. Thank you for staying with her, Porter said, fishing in his wallet for cash to pay her. Mrs. Rodriguez waved it away. You can pay me next time. Go see your girl. Porter hurried inside, dropping his keys on the counter and heading straight to Lily's room. She was curled up in bed, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, face flushed with fever. She looked up when he entered, and despite feeling sick, she smiled. Dad, she said, her voice scratchy. You're home early. Porter sat on the edge of her bed and placed his hand on her forehead. Warm, but not alarmingly so. How are you feeling, sweetheart? My throat hurts, she said, and I'm all achy. Porter went to the kitchen and returned with a glass of water and the bottle of medicine. After checking when she'd had her last dose, he measured out another. This will help you sleep, he said, holding the small cup to her lips. She grimaced at the taste but swallowed it down. Did anything interesting happen at your fancy work party? She asked, settling back against her pillows. Porter hesitated, unsure how much to tell her. Actually, yes. Something pretty surprising. What? Lily's eyes lit up with curiosity despite her illness. Porter took a deep breath. I played the piano. Lily stared at him, confusion crossing her face. What do you mean you played the piano? I mean I sat down at a grand piano in front of the whole company and played Chopin and Debussy. Lily pushed herself up on her elbows, looking at him as if he'd grown a second head. But you don't play piano. I do, Porter said softly. Or I did. For many years. I was actually pretty good at it. But Lily's face scrunched up as she processed this. How come I didn't know? How come we don't have a piano? How come you never told me? All fair questions. Porter shifted to sit more comfortably on the bed, gathering his thoughts. It's complicated, he began. Before you were born, before I met your mom even, I studied piano at Juilliard. That's a famous music school in New York. I know what Juilliard is, Dad, Lily said with the exasperated tone of a preteen who hated being underestimated. Mrs. Chen talks about it all the time. She says only the best musicians in the world go there. Well, I wouldn't say I was one of the best in the world, Porter said with a small smile, but I was good enough to get in. So what happened? Lily asked, fully awake now despite her fever. Why did you stop? Porter reached out to smooth her hair back from her forehead. Life happened. I met your mom. We fell in love, and then we found out you were coming along. He smiled at the memory. We were so happy, but we were also scared. We were young and we needed stability. So you gave up piano? Lily's eyes were wide. For me? For us? For our family, Porter corrected gently. It wasn't just about the money, though that was part of it. Being a professional musician means long hours practicing, traveling for performances, lots of uncertainty. I wanted to be there for you and your mom. But after the accident, Lily said hesitantly, referring to her mother's death in the way they usually did. After that, you could have played again. At home, at least. Porter nodded, a lump forming in his throat. I should have. But by then it had been so long. And honestly, it hurt too much. Your mom loved hearing me play. She was my biggest supporter. After she was gone, the idea of playing again just reminded me of everything we'd lost. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, What made you play tonight? Porter laughed softly. I didn't exactly volunteer. One of the executives thought it would be funny to have the janitor try to play the fancy piano. He was trying to make a joke at my expense. Lily's eyes flashed with indignation. That's mean. It was, Porter agreed. But in a strange way, I'm grateful to him now. I'd forgotten how much I loved playing, how much I missed it. Were you good? Lily asked. Did people like it? They seemed to. Porter said modestly. The CEO, Mr. Harmon, wants to talk to me tomorrow. I'm not sure what about. Maybe he wants you to play at all the fancy parties, Lily suggested, excitement momentarily overcoming her illness. Then her face fell. Or maybe you're in trouble for not telling them you used to be a pianist. Porter laughed. I don't think there's a rule that says janitors can't have secret talents. A thought seemed to occur to Lily. Is that why you're so good at helping me with my music theory homework? And why you always know when I hit a wrong note on the violin even when Mrs. Chen doesn't catch it? Guilty, Porter admitted. Dad. Lily punched his arm weakly. You've been pretending all this time that you don't know anything about music. I wasn't pretending exactly, Porter defended himself. I just didn't talk about it. Lily fell back against her pillows, looking exhausted but still indignant. We could have been playing duets. Piano and violin. That would have been so cool. The thought made Porter's heart ache. You're right. I'm sorry, Lily. She studied his face for a moment, then her expression softened. It's okay, Dad, I get it. It made you sad because of Mom. Sometimes his daughter's understanding amazed him. Porter leaned forward and kissed her forehead. The medicine should be kicking in soon. Try to get some sleep. Lily yawned, her eyes already drooping. Will you tell me more tomorrow? About when you used to play? I want to hear everything. I promise, Porter said. Now sleep. He stayed until her breathing deepened and evened out, then quietly left the room, leaving her door cracked open so he could hear if she called for him. In the kitchen, Porter made himself a cup of tea and sat at the small table. His hands still felt charged somehow, as if playing those two pieces had awakened something long dormant. He flexed his fingers, thinking about how rusty he must have sounded to anyone with real musical training. Years without practice had surely taken their toll. Yet the feeling of sitting at that beautiful Steinway, of losing himself in the music, it had been pure joy. How had he convinced himself he needed to give that up entirely? He could have found some middle ground, kept music in his life in some small way. Porter pulled out his phone and looked at the time. Nearly midnight. Too late to call anyone, but not too late to send a text. He found Jorge's number. Thanks for the heads up about the piano today. You wouldn't believe what happened. The response came quickly. Oh, I heard. The whole building's talking about it. Janitor turns out to be piano genius. Classic movie plot. Porter smiled. Hardly a genius. Just someone who studied a long time ago. Not what I heard, Jorge texted back. Harmon's assistant said the old man actually had tears in his eyes. Never seen that before. Porter remembered the CEO's face, the raw emotion there when he mentioned his mother. It hadn't just been about the quality of the playing, but the specific piece and the memories it evoked. Some connections ran deeper than professional roles or social status. His phone buzzed again with another message from Jorge. So what happens now? You still coming in to clean tomorrow, or are you too famous for that? Very funny, Porter replied. Of course I'm coming in. Lily's sick though, so I might be a little late. Bring her some soup from the cafeteria. Their chicken noodle is decent. Will do, thanks. Porter set his phone down and finished his tea. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. For now, he needed sleep. Morning came with the ring of his alarm and the realization that he'd forgotten to call Mrs. Rodriguez to tell her not to come. He quickly sent her a text explaining that he'd be staying home with Lily, then went to check on his daughter. Her fever had broken overnight, but she still looked pale and tired. I don't want to go to school, she mumbled when he woke her. No school today, Porter assured her. We're both staying home, her eyes widened. You're not going to work? Won't you get in trouble? I'll call in. Your being sick is a good reason, and after last night. Porter shrugged. I think they'll understand. While Lily dozed off again, Porter called his supervisor to explain the situation. To his surprise, the man was unusually accommodating. Take the day, Wilson. Harmon was asking about you this morning anyway. I told him your kid was sick. What did he say? Porter couldn't help asking. There was a pause on the line. He said to tell you he'll call around noon. That work for you? Yes, Porter said, his stomach tightening with nervous anticipation. That works fine. After hanging up, Porter made breakfast for Lily. Toast and scrambled eggs, easy on a sore throat. As they ate, he told her more about his years studying music, about the teachers he'd had and the performances he'd given. She listened with wide eyes, as if hearing about a stranger rather than her own father. Can I hear you play sometime? She asked when he finished. We don't have a piano, Porter reminded her. There's one at school in the music room. Lily suggested. Mrs. Chen would let you use it, I bet. Especially if she knew you went to Juilliard. The idea made Porter nervous, but he nodded. Maybe someday soon. At exactly noon, his phone rang with an unknown number. Porter stepped into the living room to take the call, his heart beating faster than it should. This is Porter Wilson, he answered. Mr. Wilson, this is Richard Harmon. The CEO's voice was formal but not unfriendly. I hope your daughter is feeling better today. She is, thank you, Porter replied, surprised by the personal inquiry. Good. I won't take much of your time, but I wanted to discuss what happened last night. And a proposition I'd like to make. Porter sat down on the couch, bracing himself. I'm listening, sir. What came next would change everything, though neither man knew just how much. Mr. Wilson, Harmon began, his voice carrying the confident authority of a man used to making big decisions. I want to be direct. What you did last night wasn't just impressive, it was extraordinary. I've been to Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center more times than I can count, and I've rarely heard playing with that kind of emotional depth. Porter felt his face grow warm at the unexpected praise. Thank you, sir. I'm a bit out of practice. That makes it even more remarkable, Harmon replied. Now I've spent the morning speaking with our HR department and the board. We'd like to offer you a new position at Meridian. Porter's heart skipped a beat. A new position? Yes. As you might know from the gala last night, Meridian is launching a music education initiative for underprivileged schools in the city. It's something I've wanted to do for years in memory of my mother. We've secured the funding, but we need someone to oversee the program. Someone who understands both music and the importance of making it accessible to all children. Porter gripped the phone tighter. Are you offering me that job? I am, Harmon confirmed. The position would involve coordinating with schools, hiring music teachers, organizing recitals, and occasionally providing instruction yourself. The salary would be significantly higher than your current one and, most importantly for a single parent I imagine, the hours would be flexible. Porter's mind raced. This sounded too good to be true. Mr. Harmon, I appreciate the offer, but I don't have any experience running a program like this. Do you have a passion for music education? Yes, absolutely, Porter answered without hesitation. And do you understand firsthand how music can change a child's life? I do. Then you have the qualifications that matter most, Harmon said firmly. Everything else can be learned. Besides, my mother used to say that sometimes the best person for a job is someone who never imagined they'd have it. They bring fresh perspective. Porter looked down the hallway to where Lily was resting in her bedroom. A job with better pay and flexible hours would change everything for them. And working with music again, helping kids discover what he had once loved so deeply. It felt right in a way that cleaning floors never had, necessary as that work was. Can I think about it overnight? Porter asked. I'd like to discuss it with my daughter. Of course, Harmon replied. Call me tomorrow with your decision. And Wilson? Whatever you decide, thank you for the music last night. It reminded me of something important that I'd forgotten. After hanging up, Porter sat motionless on the couch, trying to process what had just happened. After 3 years of invisibility, of careful survival and suppressed dreams, everything was suddenly changing because of 10 minutes at a piano. Dad? Lily stood in the hallway in her pajamas, looking better than she had that morning. Who was that on the phone? My boss, Porter said. The CEO of Meridian. He offered me a different job. Lily's eyes widened. Because you can play piano? Partly, Porter nodded. But also because the company is starting a music program for kids who can't afford lessons and they need someone to run it. And he wants you to do it? Lily came and flopped down on the couch beside him. That's amazing. Are you going to say yes? Porter looked at his daughter, at the excitement in her eyes. Would it be okay with you if I did? It would mean some big changes. Like what? She asked cautiously. Well, I'd make more money, so maybe we could move to a bigger apartment. One where we could fit a piano, maybe. Lily's jaw dropped. We could get a piano? Maybe a used upright to start, Porter said, already thinking of practicalities. And I'd have more regular hours, which means I could be home for dinner most nights. No more cleaning the office until midnight. Yes, Lily punched the air. You should definitely take it. You could teach me piano too, not just violin. Porter laughed at her enthusiasm. I could, but I'd be learning a whole new job. It might be stressful at first. Lily's face grew serious. Dad, you've been unhappy at your job for a long time. I'm not a little kid, I can tell. You always look so tired when you come home. If this new job is about music, you'll love it. I know you will. Out of the mouths of babes, Porter thought. She was right. He had been going through the motions for years, doing what needed to be done but finding little joy in it. Okay, he said, making his decision. I'll call Mr. Harmon tomorrow and accept. Lily threw her arms around him, almost knocking him over with her exuberance. This is the best thing ever. When do you start? Can I come see your office? Will you have an office? Porter hugged her back, laughing. I don't know any of that yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But as the day went on, Porter found himself making plans anyway. He called Jorge to share the news, and his friend was thrilled for him. I knew something big would come from last night, Jorge said. You can't hide talent like that forever. The next morning, Porter called Harmon and officially accepted the position. Things moved quickly after that. HR called with details about his new salary, nearly triple what he'd been making as a custodian, benefits, and start date. He'd begin in 2 weeks, giving him time to help find and train his replacement. Word spread quickly through Meridian. People who had never noticed him before suddenly knew his name. Brendan from marketing, the one whose joke had started it all, stopped by while Porter was cleaning to offer an awkward but seemingly genuine apology. I was being a jerk, Brendan admitted. I had no idea you were so talented. Porter accepted the apology with good grace. Sometimes the best things happen from unexpected moments. No hard feelings. The most surreal moment came when Porter was called to Harmon's office, not to clean it, but to discuss preliminary ideas for the music program. As he sat in one of the leather chairs usually reserved for executives, Porter couldn't help looking at the piano in the corner. Harmon followed his gaze. My mother would have liked you, Wilson. She believed that music was something everyone deserved access to, not just the privileged. My wife felt the same way, Porter said quietly. Before she passed away, she was working on plans for a community music school. I found her notes afterward, but never had the resources to make it happen. Harmon leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. Do you still have those notes? Porter nodded. I kept everything of hers. Bring them next time, Harmon suggested. Perhaps your wife's vision and my mother's can merge into something greater than either imagined. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, training, and preparation. Porter and Lily spent a weekend apartment hunting and found a 3-bedroom not far from her school. It had a small den that would be perfect for a piano. On his last day as a custodian, Porter's coworkers threw him a small surprise party in the break room. His supervisor presented him with a card they had all signed, and Jorge gave him a framed photo of the grand ballroom from the night of the gala. To remind you where the second chapter started, Jorge said with a wink. That weekend, Porter took Lily to a used piano store across town. They tried several before finding one that felt right, a slightly weathered upright with warm tone and good action. It wasn't a Steinway, but it was perfect for their new apartment and new life. The piano was delivered on Sunday afternoon. After the movers left, Lily stood beside it, running her fingers lightly over the keys. Will you play something, Dad? The first song on our new piano should be special. Porter sat down on the bench, feeling the familiar position, the right height, the give of the keys beneath his fingers. He began to play the Chopin Nocturne, the piece that had changed everything. As the music filled their new home, Porter glanced up to see tears in Lily's eyes. What's wrong, sweetheart? He asked, his hand stilling on the keys. Nothing's wrong, she said, wiping her eyes. It's just... I wish Mom could hear you play. She would have loved it so much. Porter felt his own eyes grow damp. She can hear, honey. I believe that. Lily nodded, then surprised him by asking, Can I sit next to you? Will you teach me how to play that song? Porter moved over on the bench, making room for his daughter. It's a hard piece to start with. How about we begin with something simpler? No, Lily said firmly. I want to learn this one.
Even if it takes a long time, Porter smiled.
Recognizing the determination in her eyes, the same determination that had gotten him through Juilliard, through the hard years after Anna's death, through every challenge life had thrown at him. Okay, he agreed. We'll start with this one. Just the first few measures today. As he guided Lily's small hands on the keys, showing her where to place her fingers for the opening notes of the nocturne, Porter felt a circle completing. The music that had brought him and Anna together, that had moved Harmon and launched this new chapter in their lives was now flowing to Lily. Not an ending, but a continuation. The next morning, Porter Wilson put on a suit instead of a custodian's uniform and drove to Meridian Enterprises for his first day as director of the Meridian Music Initiative. As he walked through the lobby, riding the elevator to the executive floor where his new office waited, he carried with him Anna's notes about her community music school, Lily's excitement about learning piano, and the knowledge that sometimes life's most beautiful melodies emerge from its most unexpected moments. He was no longer invisible. He was exactly where he needed to be.